And well, let me welcome everybody. This is a conversation around organizing the maker response to COVID-19. Today, our focus is Chicago, and a series of folks that I've gotten to know over the last couple of weeks who came together to form the Illinois PPE Network. I called it Chicago Shield, which is once the sounds like a cop show, but it was the name of Dan Meyer's shield, but it also, I think, in a sense, is a metaphor for protecting the community, and I think in ways that you all have locked arms and helped together without getting in the same room. So we're going to kind of go through that in a minute. I thought. Before we get into this, I'm gonna throw it to Dorothy just to give a few thoughts on what's new, Dorothy. What's happening in Nation of Makers over the last week?
So there's a bunch of stuff happening. We're working hard on a bunch of different things with a bunch of different partners. And I think Dale and I were chatting about, for some folks that, they're already embedded, you guys are already doing the work that you're doing, but for a number of people, they're wondering, is it too late to get involved? And the answer is no, it's not too late to get involved in the efforts that are going on. Certainly, you can connect up with local spaces that are around you and local efforts. But we also had an exciting conversation today with the Veterans Health Administration. Their innovation ecosystem is partnering with Challenge America, and I just threw it up on our Nation of Makers Twitter. They're partnering to develop what they're calling the COVID-19 Maker Challenge, and they're specifically reaching out to makers to try to do what we've already been doing, which is to figure out solutions to the unique challenges confronting essential workers that are on the front lines of the COVID pandemic. So they're going to have 5 events and a bunch of multidisciplinary teams that will leverage all of the skills that you guys uniquely have to develop some innovative design. So it's sort of like a 5-stage hackathon from what I can tell. The kickoff is on April 25th, but tomorrow night, about an hour later than tonight, so at 8 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, we will be having a webinar with Challenge America and the Veterans Health Administration to talk about the challenge, what they're looking for, how you can get engaged. The second announcement I do have is that Nation of Makers is also working next week. We're going to have another webinar on the 29th, which is the following Wednesday, also at 8 p.m. That's our traditional webinar time. And we're working with Game Genius, which is an organization that helps with fundraising and also game development. And we're partnered with them for a special activity during Week of Making, which will allow you to highlight all the amazing work you're doing now, and also will serve as an opportunity for you to fundraise for your makerspace. So if you're interested in that, I'll also be putting that up on Twitter. So just follow Nation of Makers on Twitter, and I'll make sure that it's on all of our social media. But we're really, really excited to kind of support all of the work that's been going on. We're really tremendously wowed by all of the innovation coming out of the maker community, the work that's being done by all of you in your communities. And I'm going to stop yapping so that I can hear about the amazing work that's going on in Chicago. I already know about some of it, but I want everyone else to hear about it.
Yeah, okay. I thought, if I can get back here, here's that link to Challenge America, COVID-19 Maker Challenge. This is the VA Innovation Ecosystem Challenge that Dorothy mentioned, and COVID-19 makerchallenge.com, okay? On that. One other piece of kind of business is, this is the open source medical supplies group of local chapters, local groups. So if you are in the audience here and want to find out how to get someone, this has a pretty incredible URL, but go to the open source medical supplies group, and this identifies people. You can kind of see here people from all over the world who are doing different things, from Mexico to Pakistan to Malaysia. So this is to some degree, we're going to be talking about Chicago and the U.S. here, but we want to learn more about what people are doing around the world. And we know while this is a global pandemic, it's hitting different parts of the world at different timelines. So some are ahead and some are behind. So we're looking at getting the Spanish group of makers on for a call later this week, or I actually think early next week. So that's what we're going on. Well, let's move on to this, folks. I think this group, a really grassroots, self-organizing group that formed the Illinois PPE Network, very much in line with what I've written about as PlanC. And we're going to get to know them today. I've been privileged, really, to get to speak to all of them, except Andrew, and understand their story. So let me go to Jay. And Jay, in many ways, I started this with what you guys were calling liberating machines. When Chicago, towards the end of March, started shutting down, a group of you started taking home 3D printers.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're calling it releasing the machines now. We're using liberating a little bit less because it's being used elsewhere. So we at DePaul about 3.5 weeks ago, we being my student staff and the faculty and staff members at DePaul, including Eric Landahl, Terry Steinbach, and then Michael Koenig, who's a student worker of mine, went into the city of Chicago to our 2 makerspace locations, one in the Loop and one in Lincoln Park. And we released all of our machines from both of those spaces, including our 3D printers. And now I think we're up to almost 20 of our 3D printers we got out. We have a laser cutter that's out in circulation now as well. Many of our vinyl cutters and all sorts of other machines. And we distributed them to our students and faculty around the city. And one of those groups became what we're calling Node 1. And that's Eric Landahl, as well as several of my student employees, and now other people that they're working with as well. And from there, we've splintered off more and more groups, and we have developed a network of about 20 nodes, possibly more, which amounts to hundreds of people making face shields, and now moving on to other things as well.
Right. And Jay, it really wasn't an option to put all these machines in a room and create a printer, a 3D printing farm.
Yeah, I mean, the model that we kind of landed on is a distributed manufacturing model, and we're calling them nodes because it kind of refers to a mesh network. And so the idea is that in a mesh network, if like one server or one computer, right, gets hit with too much traffic, then you're able to distribute that traffic amongst other nodes. And so if you think of the virus as that kind of traffic, if one node goes down because it's been inundated with an infection, the other nodes will be able to help the institutions that node was serving and continue to serve them while those people in the node that went down get well.
Right. And so how did you begin interfacing with the medical community and understanding what the needs were?
Yeah, I mean, so the needs that we early on identified were based on individual doctors. And the reason it was based on individual doctors is because a lot of institutions were still saying that they didn't need any help. And in fact, that's still happening at some places, unfortunately. And so we had folks like Eric Landahl and Sarah Rice from our Node 1 using bike couriers to deliver face shields directly to the door of ER docs. And then the ER docs would walk into the hospital with that equipment. And fortunately, since then, we've teamed up with a group of medical students from Get Me PPE Chicago, and they're delivering in many cases directly to the hospitals as well.
Okay, good. Jeff, let's bring you in. Jeff, you're a high school teacher, computer science teacher. You have a makerspace at Lane Tech High School. It's a downtown Chicago institution. You before this group started, you were you were working on some things in your makerspace, and tell us a little bit about how the Solon flat pack face shield came to be.
It started with, by the way, thanks for hosting this thing and for bringing us all together. Appreciate it. So it started with me getting access to my lab. I had not thought about the idea of the flat pack yet, but I had read an article about 3D printers being involved in some of the PPE efforts. Then I had to look up what PPE meant, and I figured that out. And then, so once I knew that I had a whole lab full of equipment that was sitting there dormant and not helping anybody. So I reached out to administration and kind of worked my way, help with my principal, work my way up through the food chain to get some people from the legal department at Chicago Public Schools and Office of Student Health and Wellness, and got approval. It was funny because the first approval was verbal from legal, and verbal legal approval made me very nervous. They said, don't worry about it. But so I got it in writing, and then was able to get access to my lab. And the idea was to basically use our resources to help with this overall effort. And in that, right around that same time, since I had gotten in my lab and we were waiting for some filament and other things to arrive, I had this idea of trying to use the laser cutters that were in front of me to make something that could be done quicker, or make a shield that could be made quicker and with less materials, and would ship easier, and some other benefits to it. So around that same time, I got connected with Jay. Jay and I have worked together for a few years on other stuff, and I'm advisory board member for his labs at DePaul. And so I don't even remember what we started talking about. It was sort of unrelated, but we were chatting, and then he pulled me into the overall into this overall effort. And so I designed the flat pack shield while I was working in my lab, and then started iterating it with some doctors at University.
Yeah, let's come back to that in a minute. I'd like to talk about, maybe Pam and some others could talk a little bit. You started to organize a group. You started meeting regularly. Jay, you had reached out to a lot of people, but there were a lot of maker spaces in the area. You all knew each other pretty well, and you decided to join forces. And I mean, Pam, I'm bringing you in because I saw that you wrote some letters to help people get their machines out of institutions. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think that there's a lot to be gained here by enabling people. It's what the maker movement's all about. It's enabling people in their little tiny piece to be part of a solution. And so I think it was Dan at the Museum of Science and Industries pulling his hair out because he was having a hard time getting permission to get the equipment out. And so I helped craft some language that could be used by anyone, saying, please let me I think Ray Jokeson, who's on the call as well, kind of referred to it like bringing the kindergarten guinea pig home for the weekend. That we just need to get this equipment somewhere it can be looked after and made useful. And so, yes, we did craft some language.
Yeah. Sasha, you are a librarian and you work at Harold Washington Public Library. You helped start the Maker Lab there. And similarly, you and other librarians took printers home and volunteered to be part of this network. Did your staff support that, or did your administration support that?
They definitely did. I think, they were working on so many other things that was not their first thought at all. Like, oh, wow, we can use these tools to assist this. But, once our staff started to kind of stir the pot a little bit and say, hey, I can do this, like I have to be at home anyway, we got a really positive response, and people volunteered. Which is really exciting because, they really wanted to be involved and contribute something.
Right. And you recruited and other librarians. I mean, I'm always impressed how librarians in the maker community show up. They just do amazing things. So you had a lot of, the nodes, quite a few of them are out in the suburbs where there are suburban libraries and employees as well.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jackie, you don't actually work at a big institution, and you couldn't haul a bunch of 3D printers home with you, so you were kind of left without, you know, without any 3D printers in the South Side, and you also realize that the hospitals in your in the West Side and the South Side were not getting served.
That's true. So I don't work for a big institution, but I do have a robotics team, and we do have one printer that's mine. Our teams were already trying to find something they could do. We're already meeting online, so we started just trying to find ways we can find other printers we can use. I'm part of Chicago Peace Fellows, which is an organization of 40 grassroots organizations. So the first 3 loaner printers actually came from one of those organizations, so Eco House. Mm-hmm. They used to run programs. They loaned us 3, and that's how we got started. Then others started showing up.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. And you connected, obviously, with Jay because your robotics team, when it does meet, it meets at the DePaul Makerspace. Is that right?
Yes, that Makerspace Idea Relations Lab is our home, and Jay is our benevolent sponsor. So we have an existing relationship. Yes. Yeah. Our kids were happy to get involved and work with them.
Yeah. Ray, you took on a role of initially of reaching out to hospitals and kind of needs assessment for the hospitals. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
Well, I want to make it clear. I was not alone in that. What I was feeling was that we had to take a multi-pronged approach. So on the one hand, we had these forms out there that were gathering requests for PPE, and that was all well and good. And on the other hand, we had people who had social connections with places, and that's all good. But I wanted to make sure that there was a methodical approach to it. And so I basically went out and, well, first I looked at Wikipedia, got a list of all the hospitals in Cook County. Then I found the Illinois Department of Public Health had a list and of everything. And while that may not have gotten every corner clinic and a lot of the places that we're starting to address now, it was at least an equitable way to address the situation. Yeah, the very first requests that came through the form or through social contacts, those were happening. But I sat down and just started grinding for 18 hours a day on the phone and on email to contact each one of the hospitals and try to make a contact either through their administration proper, through their supply chain. I asked if they had an incident commander. Sometimes I'd call back 3 or 4 times and try to get different operators to get different answers to the same question until I found somebody that was a forthcoming individual is what I was looking for. I was looking for a forthcoming individual, somebody who would speak frankly about it. And when necessary, I'd mentioned that it was confidential. I haven't talked publicly about any of the particulars about any hospital's need unless they've said it's okay. But I tried to use a lot of skills I've developed in other aspects of my life to drill down.
Yeah, I like that you described for me that the hospitals are like a Portuguese man of war, that they're kind of a host for a number of other organisms. They're a collection of departments and organizations. It's not just that you call one person and you reach everybody and you get a yes or a no.
Absolutely, and different people have different ideas of what the same piece of PPE needs to do. So when we would send out our initial starter pack to people, at a point, the starter pack was a good point of contact. I'd get somebody on the phone and I'd offer them a free thing and they'd get the free thing and they'd see what we could make. And there might be different kinds of the same item, the face shield, and they could see different applications for them. So the whole conversation was to put them at ease, break through their defenses, find out who could be served and get the material flowing.
Yeah, Jay, we have a question in the chat room. I'm open to Jay, but I think, they probably have to explain a little bit what happens on the node. So you have people printing, and they're delivering to a node, and then the node is delivering to a doctor or a hospital. So someone asked, what practices are being taken to ensure the safety of everyone down the chain, particularly folks who are delivering to high-risk locations like emergency rooms? Is a central place where practices are documented.
I'm going to kick that one over to Sarah Rice, who's part of Node 1 and is currently, I think, cutting bike tubes or elastic as well.
There we go. Hey, well, as you do that, Sarah, explain why you're using bike tubes.
Oh, well, so we need to source elastic for a lot of things that we're doing. If you think about the PPE need, There's a need for masks. There's a need for bouffants, the shower caps that medical professionals wear. Elastic is necessary in several places. And I mean, my thought is if there's another method to secure the face shield onto your head where you don't disrupt the elastic supply chain, why not do that? Supply chain has been a major issue through this whole effort. You have to consider, you know, by doing what we're doing, we don't want to deplete resources for somebody else who also needs them. We want to kind of create resources without depleting the supplies, and that's actually quite a challenge. And so anyway, yeah, these are not elastic straps.
But the suggestion came from the bike couriers, right?
Actually, no, I did this.
Okay.
I came up with this.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I did.
I'll have to correct my story.
Well, we were
Eric
messing
told me
around.
otherwise.
This was the night that we got the printers, so this was early days. We're messing around. I just printed one of these things, and I didn't have a piece of elastic. And I was like, I need to affix this thing to my head somehow. And I just grabbed a bike tube, hacked it up, put it on, and it was perfect. And then we found out we couldn't source elastic. And so Eric and I are members of a 100-person bike team, and you know, I know every cyclist in the city. I actually raced professionally for a few years. And so all of a sudden, you know, within 3 hours, there were 4 trash bags full of bike tubes in my living room, and we were done sourcing elastic.
Right.
Yeah, so
to get,
like that,
yeah, so to get to the question, but the nodes are disinfecting the pieces and packaging them up, right?
Right. But we have, so the safety procedures they start with just common sense. Like everyone in every node is expected to practice social distancing strictly. Furthermore, if you have a high risk event or a high risk thing, you know, if you have to go to the hospital, if you are living with somebody who has exposure or something, anything that increases your risk substantially, you're asked to withdraw. We can find other people, and then if someone in the node actually got sick, that node would shut down, and we would inform whoever we ship product to that someone had gotten it. And so that's the first thing is just prevention. And then other than that, we have 3 pieces of each face shield. There's the actual 3D printed piece, there's the transparency, and there's the strap, which is a bike tube or elastic. The straps, bike tubes, this is butyl rubber. It is autoclavable, and a pressure cooker is an autoclave. And so I had been doing that. My brother-in-law came up with an even better hack, which is throw them in the washing machine. It works great because soap also kills virus very effectively. And so throw them in the washing machine with lots of soap, dry them, you're good to go. And then once these are washed, and then the 3D printed parts, we actually soak them for 4 minutes in 10% bleach, and that's Swedish Covenant Hospital's disinfection protocol that they recommended. So we borrowed that from them. So the shield part, here, Exhibit A. This part is soaked in 10% bleach for 4 minutes. This part is either autoclaved or washed. This is only handled with gloves and a mask on once it comes out of the package. And then we package everything up, assemble it all with gloves on, and practice social distancing with every pickup. We never sent any of our couriers to hospital. We refused to do that, actually, and went to a lot of people's houses, doctors' houses, nurses' houses, et cetera, in our node. But once the medical student Get Me PPE network came on, they really helped us out, because obviously you're limiting yourself if you can't deliver to a hospital. And we were confident that the medical students knew what they were doing. They had appropriate equipment to protect themselves, and they could safely deliver there. So they were a big boost to our efforts.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Terrific. Let me go to Andrew. Andrew, are you at a community college, and you're also a part of Workshop 88?
Right. Yeah, I teach at a community college in the southwest suburbs, and I'm a founding member of Workshop 88, one of the suburban makerspaces. So
Okay. And what have you, how has the suburbs been different than the city?
well, so the suburbs has the same challenge that we have before the pandemic, which is we're spread out further. There's less population density, and one of the big things that I've learned professionally and personally in the last month is that any weaknesses that existed in my life, professionally or personally, before the pandemic have been like magnified, 10x. And so it is a challenge to, you want to use the distributed network approach to make things and produce things. But we want to be safe and we want to not put people at risk. And so how do you balance those things out? And that's the thing that we've been doing. But fortunately, I have a lot of contacts with people all around the suburbs and in the city a little bit, and trying to just be in a position where I can put people in contact with each other. And I really, I look at what Jackie's done in her area, and she has a strong network in her neighborhood and brings together her community. And it's the same thing in the suburbs. We're just doing it on a slightly different population density scale.
Okay. Well, let me talk a little bit about the designs. And Jackie, you explained them to me, of all the folks they're all modifications of the Prusa model. But originally the Swedish Covenant Hospital Facebook group that got started had focused on a Prusa design, and so did this Illinois PPE Network. But there were some different versions, weren't there, Jackie?
Well, the original Prusa design was thicker and taller and less efficient. So I think his name is, I forgot the gentleman's name, David Bian, pronounced his name wrong. He actually kind of optimized that design, and he made the design more efficient. And that's what we call commonly the Swedish design.
Right.
And since then, Dan Meyer from the museum has optimized even further to make certain that it fits a wider range of printers.
So
really
So Deanna, that's a good time to introduce you. And Dan is with the Fab Lab of Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and he has a hall in his behind him there in his apartment building, about 20 printers at the time we talked. So Dan, tell us what you were trying to do with the Chicago design.
So the Richard Bine design was excellent, but it needed a 200 millimeter build plate. And we had a lot of 3D printers within our community, between the library and the museum especially. We kind of standard on these FlashForge finders, which have a 140 by 140 millimeter build plate. So we were making smaller things at first, like masks and stuff like that. But the Swedish Covenant face shield model really took off. So I took it in Onshape CAD and bent it in on itself. And then, inspired by some other Facebook posts, they were doing stacks of the full-size one, so I also did a stack like that. And this allows the FlashForge Finder, it's a 140 millimeter cube, it just fits 15 pieces tall. And then you can zip them off. So there I just pulled one right off. And the normal support system doesn't allow that, so I actually modeled each individual serration to the perfect size where you could pull this off, but then it wouldn't knock off while it is getting stacked. And then also you have to put them in the oven and bake them for a while until they're kind of noodly. And then you take them out, and I have some fixtures, which your friends with bigger printers can print these for you. And then you put them inside that fixture, and then they hold in that position and cool down with a little bit of hand forming as well.
Yeah. It's a very clever design. And I know, Sasha, you were printing at home on a FlashForge Finder and printing these models. Dan, you have it set up so you kind of run in 9-hour cycles, is that right?
Yeah, it's about 10 hours now for stack, so it's pretty easy to get 2 runs in 24 hours if that's safe in your situation. The room I'm in has fire sprinklers, and things like that. The flash forge finders are pretty reliable. I've never had any problems with them starting on fire, burning, or even smoking. So you have to consider that if you're doing this at home for
Right.
safety reasons. But and then I'm down to 12 printers now. The rest of them have been distributed into MSI staff, and I'm going to continue doing that. I have to get them all top shape, all maintained, and then they go out. Because if I got COVID-19, a lot of printers would go down, like we were talking about earlier.
You know, it's something I heard in talking to people. Some of the maker spaces had 3D printers that weren't working. And when they were asked to help, they said, "Oh, well, we have a bunch of printers that are broken." So who's fixing the 3D printers in town to make this happen?
It's interesting because George Garcia built 2 3D printers and then got them up running just for this purpose. So yeah, people are bringing them up to speed, ordering parts and getting them online. My printer I ran for about a month straight every day, and it finally broke apart, and then I started focusing on the other printers.
Right.
Dale, I
Jeff,
can throw it's a huge,
yeah, go on.
I was gonna say it's a huge effort going so far. Like I have a bunch of Prusa printers that I did have access to. I no longer do, but Jay has students in his lab that know those printers really well, and they immediately, it's just this massive group effort, and 2 of the students jumped on a FaceTime call with me and helped me get everything figured out. So these were kids helping me out, and I had never met them, and that's how that's how those printers got fixed.
Yeah, I think maintenance is part of maintaining any makerspace. I mean, we rebuild our 3D printers every single year.
Yeah. Jeff, let's talk. You know, so there's the Swedish design, and then there's the Chicago design, and your face shield, your flat pack face shield, is really a different. It's really a different way of thinking about the problem, and I think it's an amazing solution. So tell us a bit about that and explain it first what it is, so that people can really kind of get it.
Thank you. I don't know if you want me to screen share. I might be able to screen share something, but it was it's the idea is that it's all cut at the same time on a laser cutter out of what we've settled on is PETG. Because PETG can be sterilized in a bleach solution without becoming cloudy, which is we were seeing happen with other materials. So the idea is throw a piece in the laser cutter. It cuts all the parts out. So there's 5 pieces. I could even go grab one, but there's 5 pieces to it. So the shield, a strap mechanism to hold it away from your forehead and provide the curvature, and then a strap mechanism to go around and attach in the back. And the flat pack idea that really kind of came together in version 8 was little tabs between the pieces and common cuts to save some time in the laser cutter. So you just prime apart and assemble it. It takes less than a minute to assemble, and then it's ready to go. And so some of the advantages are you can stack a ton of them all together. Well, one material sourced, so you don't have to worry about like elastic and the plastic and all that kind of stuff. So one material to source, although it's been hard to find now, but we're getting it. The total job takes about 1 minute and 45 seconds on the 40-watt lasers I was messing with, and it can come out of the laser cutter and go. So you could stack up a bunch of them. They're very thin, obviously. So you can get a bunch together, ship it off to a hospital or wherever else it needs to go in one easy to pack way. And then you could also sort of mass sterilize them. So if you have a solution, you could dip them all and clean them pretty quickly.
I thought it was interesting in talking to you and others is just how rapidly the iteration happened between you and doctors. I know one of the things Eric talked about was sending them a sampler pack and getting feedback on that, and then coming back with others. You had a doctor stop by and pick things up and take it to, was it University of Chicago Hospital?
Yeah, it was almost daily. It was I am not a professional designer. I'm a computer scientist that became a computer science teacher that got into making. And so I am not a trained designer in that sense. It was really a fascinating experience to be a part of. I kind of joke that it's for all the wrong reasons, but it was this doctor. I got connected to the doctor through our network, actually through Sarah. And a friend of hers partner is a resident at University of Chicago Hospital. And so he would come by my house and he got version 1. And he said, all right, we're gonna go try it out. And he brought it ended up going through about 15 to 20 other doctors over the course of about a week or so. And he would call me that night and say, all right, can we do this? And I say, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. And I would make any changes, iterate on it, and then give them make a pack of a few, like 3 to 5 of them. And then depending on material supply, and then he would come by my house that day, mask, gloves, Clorox wipes, wipe them all down while we were chit-chatting from far away from each other, and then bring them back, test them. And we did this from version 1 to version 8 in about a week, until we settled on something that we thought would be able to be mass produced. One of the coolest things that happened in that was, and this is totally coincidental, one of the doctors that was trying it out was one of my old students, one of my old high school students. And we didn't realize that until later. She's like, I think that guy was my teacher. It's the same name.
But she tweeted it. Yeah.
Well, she tweeted out a video. Yeah, she tweeted out a video of it, and so it was really neat to reconnect with her. And then we fast forward a little bit on this and found through generous donations of people like Triangle Dyes and Supplies, JC Marovich over there. His daughter is a nurse, and he wanted to get involved. And I think Andrew actually connected us, or it was a connection through Workshop 88, right? And then they did a dye for free, and then found a manufacturer in Minnesota that was willing to run at least a ton of them for us for free. And actually yesterday, the first batch of 8,000 were produced. And our
what's the rate of production?
Close to 2,000 an hour. So
wow.
I was really excited about 1 minute and 45 seconds, and then that got put to shame pretty quick. But
yeah.
I wanted to say real quick, Dale, I mean, one of the things that's most remarkable about what Jeff's saying and what the others are saying is, I've watched around the country, there've been a number of physicians, medical providers that have engaged in making, right? So these are folks that may not be part of our community or consider themselves a part of our community, but they're really excited to iterate and give feedback. And those have been the most successful. All the places that are doing really well, when you talk to them about what's your sort of secret sauce, there usually is 1 or 2 medical or healthcare providers that have been engaging in this really deep way of iteration and prototyping and delivery and that cycle kind of continuing. So it's really nice to see the sort of virtuous design cycle go on and on around the country. And really, I do think that is key in making sure that these efforts are able to sustain and get the feedback they need in a rapid way. Yeah.
Pam, you're a design, professional at university, and I have to think, I'm really proud of the way that makers are they would be taught this if they went to your school.
Yes,
but right?
Yes.
Yeah. But the kind of people like Jeff and others are figuring it out as we go. So I think it's really nice.
I think it's fundamental human capability to imagine and create, and
and to listen. But I think part of what I'm happy is I don't see people forcing designs on physicians. It's more like, does this work? And that's what I liked about Eric's group of, hey, try these things and we'll modify it if it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And I have this one theory though, that I think it's because they know they're getting something from someone who's creating something for them. It's a different reaction than, hey, we got a truckload of these things and you kind of have to take it as is, right? They're part of a creative process.
It's a partnership. It's definitely a partnership.
Dale,
Jay,
there's
go on, Jeff.
I was gonna say I've seen the design being used and remixed all over the place. I had someone reach out from Austria, which was a really neat thing, and said that the doctor there had gotten a hands on a laser cutter and material and didn't know how to use it, but talked to people and figured it out, and they had made 200 of the shields and had them in that hospital in Austria. So it's been pretty neat. Yeah. I got a delivery from my son in the background.
That's all right.
I can show you what one of them looks like if you want.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Well, Jeff's doing that. Oh, it's quick.
Oh, he's got one right there. Jeff, talk.
I threatened the allowance, and then it was immediate. So this still has the masking on it. Yeah, but it'll probably make it easier to see. But there's basically a strap mechanism that puts together here, and then for behind the head. So it just goes like that, and then attaches in the back. And So just some of the cool like design aspects that happen from talking to doctors and not being a doctor myself and not knowing really what I'm doing is we started designing to kind of teardrop out at the bottom because they wanted it to be able to have more protection on the sides over the larger respirators.
I thought it was because of your beard, but
it is. It's a beard. That's what my students were joking about. It's a beard focused shield. So yeah, that's
great. That's nice. Jay, did you want to?
I just wanted to connect some dots from some of the things that everybody's saying, and it's very interesting to see. A lot of our printers, as we were talking about, are breaking down even now because they weren't made to do this. And we've made, I think, over 30,000 shields with just the printers that we have on hand, including our corporate partner who we can't talk about. So we're scaling up from that to 2,000 an hour with Jeff's design, which I think we've set about 40. And if we have that donation that we've been talking about, $60,000 aside for to purchase and make 68,000 of them for the state of Illinois. And so then that allows us to move on to the next thing, which is face masks. And one of the things that you said, Dale, which is that, people are if they know somebody who made the thing, they're more prone to use it. I've heard Eric and Sarah talk about this as well. That becomes especially important once we begin to think about how everybody's going to need to be wearing a face mask. And they're going to be more likely to wear those things if they're made by their neighbors or people in their community than they are if they get them from some faceless corporation. And that's, I think, where the interesting scale happens is you do the design iteration early on with the small machines that we have, you scale that up, and then you move on to the next thing. And by that time, people's behavior kind of adapts and begins to integrate these pieces of equipment into their daily lives.
Jay, one of the things I thought was interesting about your group is that, you guys right out of the gate focused on production. Like we're not going to go into a big, long design, process. There's good stuff out there. We're going to do it. And yet you guys come up with some different designs, right? Jeff's design comes somewhat out of right field, and Dan's design is really looking at, well, here's the capacity. We can't use these machines. How can I come up with something that puts them in the network? And it's just actually from doing it, you see the problems and you solve for it.
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges is if that design goes hand in hand with scaling. And as you design things and you have to put them out into the communities to test them and validate them, then you get to the point where you can continue to redesign and scale. And so I think by focusing on production, what we've actually done is give ourselves the ability to do iterative design and get things out into the hands of people rather than talking about it.
Right. But there's like 2 points. One is you get iterative design feedback from doctors and healthcare workers, but you also get iterative design feedback from the printing like, oh, we're using up too much material. It's taking too long. How do we make it smaller or lighter or all these other things? And upstream, you may not have thought of that, right? Because you were doing a prototype. And now you say, well, when I do the math on that, we're not going to get very many units. So I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, things work different at scale. Pam's actually working on that with a couple other folks at in our theater school at DePaul right now with the face masks too.
Yeah. Let me start queuing up people with our questions. Jillian, who's helping me, will, if anybody wants to ask a direct question. Before we go there, I just want to toss it to Dan for a minute because in a sense, Dan, what excites me, and I think excited you, is in some ways this idea that we see just in this Chicago group here is an idea of Neil Gershenfeld's, from 15 or 16 years ago. I realized we did a story on Fab Labs and Neil in the very first issue of Make Magazine. And it really was that you could design things anywhere, ship them locally to be replicated with the same set of machines in each place. And so when Jeff says people are using the laser cutter and offset, this is the stuff that's in makerspaces around the world. But isn't it kind of ironic that we have to get the equipment out of makerspaces into homes and to make it accessible for doing this? But at any rate, there's a real design idea here, about manufacturing and the power of production and tools.
Yeah, you have hyper-local production. So these nodes in this mesh network and COVID-19 kind of forced us into a corner to really leverage that hard and think about that concept where you have, 2, 4 printers in a node distributed, and then you send all your files digitally. And then you don't have to expose each other. It's fascinating. And 3D printers are fastest tool for rapid prototyping we have in manufacturing. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I did it professionally before. I did a fab lab and ran a fab lab and was involved with hackerspaces. So you're right. And we're testing this out, and it's working really well. And we're only going to get better at this. So I'm fascinated to think about what happens in the future with this.
Yeah. Well, let me ask just any of you an open question. Is what do you think other cities could learn from your experience? Even ones that may just be behind the curve, or those that are starting up, or those that are trying to do this. Give us some details, Jay, like how often do you guys coordinate and meet or talk?
We meet, so there are a couple, there are very tactical things we can talk about that are helpful, and then also more strategic and philosophical things.
Yeah.
The tactical things that we do that are very successful is we talk Monday through Friday at a micro level about what we need to be doing, what we're doing for the group, and how we are, what our nodes are producing. Saturdays we do an optional call where we do a macro kind of level. Are we still headed in the right direction? Do we need to change what we're doing? So we do constant calls. We have a Slack. Everybody's got a Slack something, but we have a Slack group that we use to keep in communication with each other. And those are the tactical things. I think one of for me, the philosophical and strategic thing that's been helpful is thinking very locally, as Dan was saying, and thinking about not just being resilient, but anti-fragile. And so anti-fragility is the difference. It's resiliency is when you have something that hits your system and you're able to withstand it. Anti-fragility is like a muscle where when you tear it, it grows stronger. And I think that's what's been interesting about our group is as things get harder, we actually produce more. And that's been a very interesting concept, is to always think locally about how you're acting and think in a manner that does not centralize and thus make your group more fragile.
Mm-hmm.
I would go one thing on that.
Yeah, go on, Pam.
The agility of the network. So what's been amazing even in the last week is as the focus has moved to some cloth masks like this, where there's something called bias tape, which is the white part that's closing the edges as well as forming the ties, because as Sarah Rice pointed out, elastics in short supply. So very quickly, everyone started printing these little bias tape jigs to help the sewing folks more quickly be able to produce masks. And that's been so magic to watch happen, that everyone's using all the capabilities they have to do any useful thing.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Noel, I think you joined us. Where are you from, and give us some context?
This is a bias tape former that I made from cardboard, so it can be made very very quickly. Together with a set of other stuff I made to help sewing masks. Sorry for the sound.
No, that's great. That's great. So Pam, that's what you were talking about, right?
Yes, exactly. And if you don't know what we're talking about, so you can take a flat strip of cloth. This is 1.5 inches wide, about 4 centimeters, and you can feed it through one end of this, and it comes out the other side all folded up like this, which saves approximately 1 million hours when you're sewing and ironing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, there he goes. He's got one too. Yeah.
Right. Noel, did you have a question, or do you just want to show us that?
Oh, I'd like to know where to put it to get you all to use it. This needs 5 seconds on the laser cutter most.
Okay. Well, good. Well, send it to me, dale@make.co. We'll put it up on our website. But a lot of it's just spreading it around the community. We have a big list of things you can do at home. So I think that's an important thing. How did that come to how did you think of that?
Well, my sister sews masks, and I really looked at the process, which which steps take long and how can I make those steps shorter, and so how can I make it easier for everyone who sews masks. So it's not the only one. There's some more stuff, but this is the one that is the fastest to laser and saves the most time.
Great, thank you, Noah. I appreciate it. Jackie, yeah, go on. Look like you're ready to say something.
Yeah. So one of the questions was about what can other cities learn from us. I think one of our key strengths is accepting that everybody has value and that everybody should do what they can do, instead of everybody trying to go out and grab a 3D printer and print the exact same thing. Use what you have, the best that you can, and share what you know. As long as you are doing something to make things that are better and communicating openly, then everybody grows the most faster.
Yeah, I think that's great. I also think it's one of the reasons why I want to go back to Ray, have him talk a little bit about the veterans that he worked with. But it's to really do this network, you need all kinds of different skills. You need people that are coordinating. You need people that are delivering. It isn't all on just how much yes, we could use as many Dan Myers as possible that know how to make lots of things, or a Jeff Solon to design things and crank them out. But we also just, what like Ray did in talking to hospitals, I think it's really important. What you did talking to community organizations, these are also, making these connections makes the network stronger and able to serve more people. So let me ask Ray, talk a bit about your work with veterans so folks get to know that.
Well, I'm an active member of the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and from that, I've got a huge network of brothers and sisters. And I had just been, since January, we do a thing in the Legion called buddy checks, where you essentially call everybody in your network and find out how they're doing. So I had already been in contact with a lot of people. They were used to hearing from me, and I certainly had a spreadsheet of all their contact information. And so when I realized we were going to have some shortfalls as far as just getting people to scoot stuff around, and this goes back to what Jackie said about everybody do what you can do. And I try to encourage people, even the makers, like if you don't have a 3D printer at home, that's fine. What do you got? What are you willing to do? Are you willing to devote a little bit of time? Can you make a few phone calls for me? Can you call a couple of hospitals for me today and just figure it out? And it's like, this is not rocket science what we're doing. It may need a little bit of guidance, but I've got some veterans out there with pick 'em up trucks and vans. I've got some friends in the furniture design business from that other aspect of my life. And we've been trying to put them to work shuttling things around. And I find the veterans are particularly well suited to the logistic missions. They know exactly what's going on and they know how to do it. And they know, I got a guy sent me a text about an hour ago. He said, okay, end of mission, returning to base. And we have the shorthand down, and they're really good at that kind of thing. And they also know that that they want to contribute to a greater good. It doesn't matter. They don't have to feel any particular tie to it. They know they're part of the community and they understand community service.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ray. We have a question in the Q&A section. I just directed to look at some of them aren't questions, some are different things. But Megan Hoffman writes, this virus is particularly impacting communities of color who, because of systemic inequity. Chicago is a city that seems like it'd be particularly affected by those inequities. How is this impacting these efforts? Jackie, with your tropical background, can we get you to?
So I happen to live in the community that has the second highest death rate from the virus. So I think that the sense of urgency is greater when you realize that your neighbors are dying. It makes it easy to overlook differences about minor details in design, choice of words when you're having conversations about to get things done. The get her done attitude kind of takes over. So I was able to mobilize communities, not because I'm special, but my communities themselves are special. And we've always helped each other. We've always worked together and shared resources. So when something like this comes along and it's an opportunity to contribute in a new way, it's, there's no need for us to become civic-minded because we're civic-minded by necessity. what has happened that's been different and fun for me is that those who were not embracing maker technology before are suddenly realizing the value in it. So the virus has impacted us not much different than most things that impact our communities. We're always hit harder. We always hit, we bounce back. We're resilient out of necessity. But with the introduction of the maker tools, we're learning that there are other ways that we can make things happen. And now that we have, and a great example is a woman who had never seen a 3D printer before, was given a 3D printer, and in less than an hour, she had produced something that could help save lives. And I think that's very, very powerful in and of itself.
Yeah. And in your case, initially, you didn't have 3D printers. You had one in your house. And then, people began delivering, Dan and I guess Elizabeth Kapruki from University of Chicago, some others, someone has a Hacker Arts Lab, I believe, started delivering you some parts.
We have been, we started our first week making 200 prints. Since then, we're up to over 1,500 or 1,600 a week, simply because we have others bringing things to us. The Museum of Science and Industry has been a great contributor. The Adler Museum has stepped up. And then we have individual makerspaces, Pumping Station 1. Just folks from all over the city have been bringing things to us. It's been amazing, the show of support that we've received.
Right. We've also been giving you some filament too, right?
Yes, we're getting filament. We need more transparent sheets though, but we're getting filament. We do appreciate the filament.
Yeah, Dorothy, let me ask you that. I mean, that is kind of a universal thing we're hearing, is just the supplies. And it's not always the things like filament, it's PETG plastic sheets and such. What are you hearing on that?
Yeah, so we're hearing the same thing. I mean, it's pretty much getting to be limited for everybody. So one thing we've been thinking about is, one thing we've been doing is working to try to talk directly to suppliers to try to negotiate, to make sure that we're part of sort of the supply chain, and that, they're seeing, okay, makers are using this stuff and they understand sort of the urgency for what we're using these things for. I think there's been a lot of resourcefulness. So, obviously, Sarah shared, how she was thinking about, what things could be done to sort of address some of the supply deficiencies. And I think one of the other things we're trying to, think about is also the cost of all of this, right? So I think a lot of spaces, it's not even just, it's not even just that there isn't a lot of supply, but it's also the supply may cost more than we have the ability to pay for. And not all of this work is necessarily subsidized or being paid for by other organizations. So we're trying to really work to see how we can develop sort of an equity algorithm. We've already at Get Us PPE, so Nation of Makers has been partnered with Get Us PPE, and Get Us PPE has been developing an equity algorithm for the distribution of PPE so that it could be fairly distributed. But I think we're also thinking about, does that equity distribution algorithm can it also apply to things like supplies, right? So can we figure out a way to make sure that, to the question that was asked by Megan, marginalized communities that are disproportionately affected also get access to those supplies, and maybe get access to those supplies first, so that we can make sure that the communities that need it the most are getting them. And again, it's not to say other communities won't get it. It's just to say that when we look at distribution and everything, and Jackie sort of just eloquently said this, her community is the community that gets it the last, almost always. So I'm trying to change that, and we're trying to work towards figuring out those types of algorithms so that we can make sure that supplies get to the people that need it, whether that's full on, PPE, or whether that's, the actual making of the PPE, or whether that's the supplies to make PPE. So it's a challenge though. It really is, because I think, we're getting to the edge of where suppliers are just running out themselves. And obviously supply is coming from other countries, and obviously our trade or lack thereof is really deeply affecting things. So we've also been trying to talk to, leadership, and, obviously we can't control the way the federal government works, but you know, we really are trying to have those higher level, you know, conversations about the impact that supply can have.
Yeah, Dorothy, thank you. Ray, one of the things I learned from you that I thought was really interesting in your interfacing with veteran communities, which can be predominantly older Americans, it's just, you know, it is kind of the digital divide. It's like all of us are pretty comfortable getting on Zoom using spreadsheets, and kind of it's a rapid way to organize, a rapid way to you know, seems fair, seems open, seems democratic. But, you know, there are large parts of a city that people don't know to go online. They're not online perhaps at all, or they just, that's not part of how they live their lives. And you kind of dealt with that with the veterans.
Well, with the veterans and with identifying need in underserved communities in Chicago. So it takes more work. It takes more low tech energy. And sometimes it just takes, you know, that brute force bulldozer type activity of divide and conquer. So whether it's, if I have 125 veterans over 70 that I have to reach, a number of them have had, maybe they haven't updated their phone number with us for 40 years and they've got a disconnected phone and they're hard to find. So
when I talked to you, I should have put it in the article, but I thought, like, everybody else is using email and Slack. You know, Ray is just doing the phone calling. You know, he's just on the phone. You know, he's got a list. He's going to call all these people and talk to them, and you know, not giving up. And I think that, you know, we forget to do that sometimes, and I think that's really remarkable.
Well, I need an unmediated communication. I need a read back. And if I sent out 80 emails to 80 emails I gathered about hospitals, I might get 3 responses back that day. But if I make a bunch of phone calls, at least I know when I get somebody, a live one on the line, that I can check them off.
You know, I'm going to kind of use this as a closing question because we're over the hour. Stephen Clark asked, you know, there are folks available how to coach new groups, how to, you know, how to figure out how to break up the work, and you know, in a sense, it's the same question I asked earlier: is how can others learn from you? And it's certainly, I want to say that what motivates me to write these articles about what people are doing is to learn about it. These are patterns that we can learn from each other. We can adopt, just like, you know, Dan's, you know, face shield design is a pattern. You know, Ray's calling people is a pattern. Jackie's way of setting up nodes without having 3D printers is a pattern. And so it's you know, it's not that so much there's a right way to do a lot of these things. It's kind of learning how to do it, and you get better at doing it. But let me throw it to you, Jay, to start, and see if anybody else wants to kind of make any closing remarks in that direction. What can other people learn from you? And is there any documentation, you know, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's IllinoisPPE.org. Pam has also put together some excellent resources on Google Drive that I think are linked to on there as well. And we have everything from how to start a node, how to release your machines, what designs we're making, the reasoning behind some of the designs that we're working on. And I think in general, and Jackie may have posted this already in chat, but we don't think about what we're here to do is provide the resources and and remove barriers for people who want to make things, so that they don't have to invest their own money, and so that they can, so everybody can get involved. And I think moving away from that sense of wanting to control everything has been important, right? That's why the old model is kind of not working right now, is because it was very tightly controlled and centralized. And we just try to get as many people involved as possible by giving them the power to make the things that everybody needs.
Mm-hmm. You know, the other thing, I mean, I see Stephen followed up with some questions here, and sometimes it's sort of like, I think his questions kind of look like, well, things come to a central node and they're distributed out. And it seems like the way you work as a group is very much this mesh network. You know, the nodes are empowered to act independently and to do, you know, Jeff is doing different things than Dan, and Jackie's doing different things than Ray, and that kind of, and Sarah, and that model.
Yeah, and when they get too big, you know, Sarah's node just split off. When they get too big, we split them, and then they continue to grow. And it's kind of the idea that you don't get outside of like the expanse of control, you know. So 10 people, 12 people, and that's about it. And then, you know, you kind of shard the group.
Yeah. Well, good. Does anybody else have a closing thought? Is something we didn't say that you think is really important to get out to everybody?
I think Jay had said this to our group before, which I thought was a really good way to phrase it. Just get out there and just do it. Like, if we talked about it too long, we would probably get a lot less done. And so the model that people are just up and going and ready to do whatever they can to help. And that's, I think, kept the growth working and the reach working. So we threw in, I can't remember if it was mentioned or not, we threw in like a back end of using Airtable just as a way to organize everything. That helped a ton. Being able to organize who the makers are and who the institutions are that need stuff and who the couriers are. And then the people in our group are just jumping in there to manage what parts that they can and get stuff out there. But there's definitely not rocket science. The hardest part probably is organizational structure. But the goal of part of this whole call, I think, was to say, here's a model that's working and maybe it'll work for you to be able to copy and paste. Nobody's making a dime off of this. Nobody on this call here has made a single red cent off of it. We're just trying to help. And so I know there might be a need where people are saying, is there a handbook or what can I go to? Or you can start by going to our website. So if you go to www.illinoisppe.org, you'll see our sort of charter document, and it explains how our structure works, what the designs are that we're using. We're trying to make it better every day, and we got people working on that. But and if we can, we'll put together a handbook of sorts that people can copy and paste. By sure, reach out to any of us, and I'm sure anybody here would help if they could.
I would say that a lot of this you can't teach. Now, the group of us coalesced very quickly because we have been maintaining our connections amongst each other for years. I'm also on the IRL Professional Advisory Board. The same group runs into each other at local the maker summits that Sasha organizes. We will see each other at every maker fair, mini maker fair. We hang and we maintain our connection. So it was easy for us to come together. And we all knew that we were doing this out of a good communitarian response, or in my case, the hypertrophic sense of teamwork, and it wasn't for personal gain. The only person I've hung up on in the whole month of doing this was a guy who it was obvious that he was in it to win it for some personal ego. And I said, okay, thanks, bye, hung up. But the people that you're seeing on this panel are givers and doers. And they're not worried about, stepping on each other's toes. It's like, we're just gonna support each other and accept support where it's offered. And we're not worried about this is, I mentioned in the chat, you don't worry about what you can't do, worry about what you can. And if we try to encourage you, we do some therapy for each other during our meetings too. If somebody's running up against an obstacle, talk them down and go someplace else. Go off in a slightly different direction where you are going to make some gains. But we're doing this because we know we need to and we know we can. And I'm very very happy with everybody's attitude toward that.
Well, let me close on. I'm sorry. Go on.
Can we step back from the maker and corporate centered approach and say that in addition to the things that we're doing now, that there's also an existing model that's out in the wild. It's mutual aid societies. So we are, in spite of the fact that we're using technology, we are each helping each other by doing what we can. So for those who are looking for models, you can use us as a guide for how to make the technical things happen. But the magic sauce has a lot to do with the fact that it's mutual trust and mutual respect. The things that come out of your natural, your neighbors helping neighbors.
Yeah, that's well said. Well, listen, thank you all of you for being part of this session today. Thank you for what you're doing. It's so important. And Jackie, what you just said is we do have to figure out how this can influence our future and shape our future. And you made this point to me. I think that the minority communities have had to rely on a civic response in the ways that the well-off communities haven't. And so I think with that sort of humility of learning from those we're helping, we can perhaps get there. But I think many of you are individual actors outside of your institutions, doing things that sometimes institutions just aren't very good at doing. And it's the responding and garnering the resources and the connections that each of you had. And I think it's one of the really bright spots in this whole pandemic. So thank you all in Chicago for what you're doing, and Illinois, Mokina, and other places. Dorothy, thank you for being on us today. Thank you everybody for being part of this. We'll do this again next week. I'm trying to line up Neil Gershenfeld. We'll do a Fab Lab conversation. So let's see what we get, and look forward to. Thank you all. Keep safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Chicago.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.